Live.
Live.
We're live. Nice.
And mea culpa, but I really have to take a rest.
Yeah, no,
Slides.
take care.
No problem. Take care.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fifth. I think it's the fifth meeting, right? Where we are gonna discuss a little bit about the Spec 0.3 version and see what people have anything to discuss. We have a few things on the agenda today, but I think we have plenty of room for questions. And if anybody have anything to add, friend, do you mind making me screen share? No? Okay. Maybe? Maybe.
Are you able now?
No.
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 No, I can't give you any other permissions.
Okay, that's fine. So here's the GitHub issue with the agenda. Before we get started, does anyone have any questions? Anything they want to ask? Introduce anything? Right. So Sergio, I think you wanted to go first, right?
Yeah. Okay, so as part of what we wanted to work on the 3.0 release, regarding tooling was to implement the parser API, the intent-driven API, into our parser.js. I think I have some kind of deja vu.
Sorry, I sent you the wrong link. 2 seconds, Sergio. This one. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like,
Yeah, I was wondering why
that's not the agenda.
I was wondering why the issue was closed already. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Maybe.
Sorry, Sergio. Go ahead.
It's fine. Okay, so as I was saying, this is a five status update, but I decided to do it first. Yeah, we are doing like this today. Everything is special today. What I wanted to say is that we started implementing the parser API on the parser.js. Parser API link is here. And what the best way to do it? So we decided to just rewrite the whole parser.js into TypeScript, which is not yet done, by the way, obviously. So there is an issue tracking the effort as well here. Sorry for the link intrusion there, but there is no other way. I cannot share the screen either. Some of us started to write the parser.js into TypeScript. For now, we are 3 people involved. It's Maciek, Suvik, and me. We are like very motivated, I would say, and we are doing pretty well. You can join the efforts. I invite you to join the efforts because it's a nice excuse to learn TypeScript as I'm doing. So it's my first project and I'm starting to like it, which is good.
Wait, what?
Sorry, what?
You're starting to like TypeScript?
Yeah, it's nice. For linting, I mean. So yeah, again, I invite you to join. So we will need more hands on it. I would really appreciate if you can leave feedback. All the work we are doing there, it's being merged into the next major branch, which is this, because it will obviously will be released as a major version on the parser.js. Why all of this is related to 3.0? It's again because at the same time we are rewriting the parser, we are changing completely the API of the parser based on the parser API specification that we agreed to implement in the past. So it's everything, all the things at the same time, which is pretty funny. As a side note for this, and I'm going to end with this, we are not completely following the parser API that we find in the parser API repository, because as we are implementing that API, we are finding like issues because we didn't design the API based on the implementation, but rather like as a whole concept, right? So every time we find an issue, we solve it, and we will eventually update the parser API specification with all the changes. Yeah, any question?
Are you updating the parser API as you go, or in the end when it's complete?
We are not doing it as we go because sometimes we merge code that depend on other, and we won't be able to validate it until, you know, like we give it a better usage. But it's something that we eventually will start doing it soon. I don't think we have to wait for the end because it doesn't make sense. But it's very organically, to be honest. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, next up. So at the moment we have added all of the next major branches for the majority of the repositories. However, there's a bit of a discussion, like how should we, for the 3.0 schemas, or for example, the 3.0 schemas, is that targeting the next major branch, or is it targeted, should it be targeting another branch that is based off the next major? Like, how should we separate that it's a major or a breaking change in the specific repository versus a new feature, for example? Because adding the 3.0 schemas is, I mean, technically it's just a feature. It's not a breaking change per se. So directly including it might not make that much sense. So I'm not sure what your opinion is on it.
Yeah, regarding this, in fact, I dropped a comment on the 2.4 release work, which is related, because in that case, yeah, the question is pretty clear, right? Like, does a new feature be considered like a breaking change? Well, it's not that question. So a breaking change in a repository doesn't mean that it should become a breaking change in a dependent repository. Like in this case, the breaking change is in the repository per se and in the package, in the library. But that doesn't mean that it's breaking the spec or even the parser, which is breaking it in this case, but it could not, right? I mean, in my opinion, I think it's just a major in this particular case. It's just a breaking change affecting only the schemas and the parser. And the change is very small. So it's just updating the ID. It's just one line fix. But what about the other tools that could be out there? We don't know, that depend in particular of some of those IDs, right? That's my concern. If we go with a, let's say, official tooling, yeah, it's simple, and I will advocate for moving forward. But yeah.
So I guess from like your point of view for the 2.4 release, it's more a question of, should you add the 2.4 schema based off the new breaking, like the next major branch, right? Or should you do it based on the, like how it's currently done?
Exactly. Should we wait for 3.0 spec major change? Or rather just, because at the end it's the same, right? So the breaking change is going to happen anyway. The only thing that changes is that, okay, with a breaking change in the spec, we are giving more visibility to developers, because at the end, the spec is containing as well a breaking change. But that doesn't mean that their documents can stop working, right? So what's the difference on releasing it now than when we release the 3.0 spec? That's my question. I think it's just only about visibility, nothing else.
So you're arguing that we should probably release the next, like a 3.0 version for the spec JSON schema repository instead of aligning it with the 3.0 spec release that we have no idea when happens.
Yes.
Good question.
I could buy the argument of waiting for spec 3.0 if we somehow mitigate the impact, right? Because we just force people to do a major like update once, I would say. But this is going to happen more times in the future, I guess. So we have to come up with something more, I don't know, with a standard solution or process. I don't know how to call it. This is my opinion.
I think you have to, I think it makes most sense if you actually do the, remember you're sharing your screen, friend. If
Type password here.
Yeah, I think it makes most sense maybe that, like for the 2.4, don't use the next major. Like don't use the separated schemas. I think that makes most sense, because that way the parser don't need to be
But the parser is not a breaking change. The parser change.
yes, but do we want to make the parser use the next major of the JSON schema spec repository? Or should that live on a next major as well? Because if we merge that, if we merge it in the parser, for example, so the parser now uses the next major version, it means that as soon as you merge the 2.4 spec JSON schema documents into the master branch, we need to keep the next major updated at the same time, right? And that actually goes to the next agenda item as well, which is how do we sync between these two? Because there's probably going to be a 2. Like we know there's going to be a 2.4 now. There's probably going to be a 2.5 as well before 3.0 is released. How do we want to keep those next major version branches up to date with what is happening in the other branches, right? And since we haven't done it before, it's just no one knows, right?
So I was thinking, like, is the next major branch on the spec JSON schemas repository, does this major mean major for spec JSON schemas or major for the spec?
The JSON schemas.
Yeah, it's for the repositories themselves, right?
To me, the way I was looking at this is for the next major version of the spec, not for the next major version of this repository.
And in their theory, it is, right? Because
that's why I wasn't like that's why I'm like surprised, right? Like I think next major branch on spec JSON schemas and parser.js are to match with spec next major branch. Not, I mean, it's not about the next major version of the parser and the spec JSON schemas. Like we should be free to launch whatever version on the parser and on spec JSON schemas in the meantime, right? We can get up to 10.0 if we want there, right? But the next major branch should be where the work towards matching with spec 3.0 happens. You know what I mean? That was my understanding at least. In this case, there's no problem. Like you don't use next major for your next major version of this repository.
Right.
Maybe that's the confusion. I don't know.
yeah, I mean, it definitely could be, yeah. Because normally when we talk about next major, right, it's that, at least how I see it, it's that specific library that has the next major version. Like that is where all the breaking changes happen. But from our perspective, it's a bit of a, like it's both, right? Because like a breaking change in the spec is a breaking change in the parser, which is a breaking change in the generator.
No.
That's not going to happen.
Yes, for now it is, but yeah.
Yes. That's what I mean.
Now it is, but it doesn't have to. Yeah.
But that's the point. So with this example that you added, from my point of view, it's that it's clear that a repository or a library, a package should have its own life cycle.
Yes, that's true.
Even though I'm completely aware of what the issues are regarding things, how to link, how important is for us to somehow link releases between spec, JSON schemas, and parser, right? Yeah. Let's call the core tools or whatever. The point is that, so it might happen, like in this case, that there is a breaking change in the schemas, but it's not producing any breaking change in any other. So why would I wait for a new major version on spec? On spec, I would say.
You don't. You continue. You release a new major version of spec JSON schemas, but you don't work on the next major branch because that's like kinda reserved for the other for syncing with the spec. Look, can it be that maybe so to avoid this confusion is that so we leave next major as the branch to work on the next major version of a specific package or repository, and then we create another one, which is especially on parser and on spec JSON schemas, we create another one, which is next spec major. And that we use it for syncing with the spec. I don't know, just raising the user. So we don't have this problem anymore, right? Like whatever is for the next major version of spec JSON schemas, it goes to next major. But whatever effort goes into the other one, into the in syncing with the spec, goes into next spec major, something like that, right? So
I think my only concern is that, or at least that's one of them. What we currently have on the next major branch in the spec JSON schema repository is that we split out all of these definitions, right? Making it more maintainable. If we don't have that change for 3.0, reviewing PRs for that, like if we still do it with one bigger, like one file, making all of those breaking changes, I think would make it hard to review.
But that's what I mean. Like you pointed to next major branch now on spec JSON schemas, right? Because it's going to be a major. I mean, unless the work is done. If the work is done on spec JSON schemas, you don't even have to point to next major. You create a pull request with feed and exclamation mark and so on, and it will just create a new major release. You don't even have to have a special branch for this, right. I think. So that's that will be one thing. But let's stick to next major. So next you use next major as your next major version branch for the release of spec JSON schemas, right?
Yes.
Once it's released, master will be updated, right?
Yep.
Then you merge master into the next spec major branch, so you get the changes there as well, right? So to be able to better work with or towards version 3. Or that's one way, or the other one is you merge, you create a pull request to merge it to master, like next major to merge it to master. So you want to actually release, and before even it's merged, you merge the next major branch into the next spec major branch. You know what I mean? You don't have to wait for master even, right? So you can already start working there. Up to you. I mean, I think it's safe to release a major version of the spec JSON schema package by itself. It has no consequences, right? Like other than updating parser and so on, but that's fine. And so it could be like quickly released. We don't have to wait for anything, right? Thing is, in my opinion, and as per my understanding, the next major branch was to sync with the 3.0, right? 3.0 version. If that's not the case, then let's create another one so we can sync the work there, right? That's what I'm saying. So we get both. Makes more
sense, yeah.
You know, so we get both.
Yeah.
Well, let's make it clear.
Yeah, I like it.
You know, let's make it clear what's the purpose, because for me, that next major branch was meant for that. And if I'm not mistaken, I think how many pull requests are gonna make this? So is there just one pull request that's gonna create this major this new major version on the spec JSON schemas? You don't need a branch for that, a special branch for that. This pull request can have the feed exclamation, and it will trigger a new major
directly
version.
to master.
Yeah, you don't need next major for that.
No, but it's nice to have when you want to tie multiple breaking changes together. That is basically.
That's my point. That's my point. It's not the case right now. That's my point.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be, yes. because there's a few issues in the repository that has the breaking change potential.
And you mean you want to make those changes and hold them there until you have all the breaking changes together, and then you create a single release? That's what you mean? If it's limited in time, I will do it. If it's not limited in time, I will discourage that, because then it means that I mean, if it's clear, like, when is it going to finish, as in, yeah, we do only these 2 or 3 issues and that's it, and then we release this. Otherwise, we can live forever in this branch, and that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a maintenance issue. So unless it's really like scoped to a specific set of issues that can easily be tackled relatively soon, unless that's the case, I will not do it. And think about it, like, who is affected by us releasing a new major version of the spec? Of the
People that doesn't
spec
follow
schemas.
semantic versioning, because or doesn't care about semantic versioning, you know.
But my
Like-
point is, like, who is using spec JSON schemas? Do we know something about it? Maybe just us.
Yeah, true.
Most probably just us. So then who cares about releasing 3 major versions in a row?
Yeah.
Right?
Do you
I
have
would
any-
advocate for taking care of this in the spec, for example. We don't want to release measured versions
Yeah,
every
the spec is different, right?
6
Because
months,
everybody everybody
in-
depends on the spec.
in this
But
case,
this
I agree.
Specific package, who cares? Like, that's fine. I will say even say that it's fine for those who are depending on this package. There might be someone. Okay, who cares?
parser.
I mean, other than
parser.
us. That's that's what I mean. Like, other than us,
Mhm.
is it gonna make it a breaking change for the parser if we release this reorganization of the files?
No.
It's not a breaking change because we are targeting
Okay.
the
That's my point.
2.xx. So it's
That's
not.
my point. So it will be just a bump the version of the parser and on the parser, and that's it.
I'm fixing one line.
I'm fixing one line. Okay, that's fine.
Yes.
So I guess my question is, because that makes sense to me too. So as soon as possible, let's merge next major to like
Let me check.
the master, right? My question is, there's a few issues in the repository that could potentially be breaking changes to the spec, like to the JSON schema files. If we want to make the changes as a ripple effect to all versions, and I'm not sure we want to do that. And it's more a consistency problem. Like, we can do it for just 3.0 and that would be it, right? So going forward, we would have all of these consistencies fixed. But of course, the previous versions would not have those things. One of them is, for example, that when we define, for example, define a message or a message object, do we define it as both a reference and the actual message object? Or do we define it as just the message object? That is one of the consistencies that we don't have in place at the moment. You can read about it here. The last example is basically what I'm referring to.
So look, I just shared a link as well, like who is using the spec JSON schemas repo. And it's the bump CLI, our parser, studio, and stoplight spectral rule sets. Handable. I guess, right? Like, it's something that Like, let's not overcomplicate our lives,
That's
right?
yeah.
Like BAM CLI, I'm sure it will be an easy fix for them as well. Parser, easy fix. Studio, easy fix. And stoplight spectral rule sets, I think they're not, they're like on hold, so nobody is using it yet. Like, we're gonna probably start developing these rule sets ourselves, maybe. But
I contribute this package to the spectral. At the
Okay.
moment, the spectral exactly use our package to from fetching
and
the JSON schema.
will it be like a huge change if we create a
No, it's only the import the
No.
JSON schemas, but by the absolute path to the JSON schema, not by the index.js, but to the JSON. Yeah. So I don't think so. It will be the problem. Of course, if we have the same structure, yes, in the next major of the folder, so it won't be the problem.
Just saying, because sometimes we start thinking like, what if someone, what if, and in majority of cases, what happens is that you're living in a utopian world where what if this, what if that, but none of these things are happening. So, and also we can do it. I mean, as much as we know, I think there are 4 or 5 packages depending on this. If there is someone else depending on this package and it's not there in this list for whatever reason, because they're using a private registry or something like that, let them complain. Let them complain, and
we have to remember that this is a major version, so using semantic versioning, you usually stick to one measure, right?
Exactly. We're not going to break anyone. I mean, if they break, it's because they changed the dependency on their side and to a new major, so they should be the first ones to take care of changing whatever is needed. So I don't think we're going to be breaking anyone, unless not by mistake. But true, if it will be like a lot of work, producing a lot of work on their side, then it's like, okay, we're not breaking them, but if they want to upgrade, it will be a lot of work on their side. But it will be anyway at some point, right? Pretty soon, right? So I don't know, like, but the evidence is that we have so far is that almost nobody's using this package. So let's not overcomplicate. That's my opinion here.
It would be.
Sorry, go.
No, go, Jonas.
No, I was just asking, like, what's the non-complicated way then?
I mean, don't work on the next major branch. Don't accumulate changes. Just release them as you have it. If you have a breaking change, if you have a pull request with a breaking change, name it fit ! And it will produce a new major version. If you have another one tomorrow that is another breaking change, another major version more. And if in a week we bump 3 major versions, who cares? You know what I mean? That's
we can do that for sure. Yeah.
Like, that's totally fine. I mean, unless we, and especially because, this is all going to be for, like, targeted at the new version, right? For a new version. So whoever is targeting older versions should be fine. Which I'm guessing, for instance, spectral rule sets and BAM CLI, they're targeting up to 2.3 or something like that, which should be fine for them. Like, they shouldn't be caring.
Makes sense. But let's do that then. I'm gonna create a PR for the Spec repo.
Sergio say something.
About what you said, Frank, about the next release, major, whatever. So I think we have to move that into a discussion or something, that we don't forget about it and we write it down. because otherwise this is gonna be like we don't take decisions in meetings. So
Yes. No, that's true. But the thing is that I will first clarify if next major is for this or if it's to sync with the spec. That was my thought at least. So let's clarify this and let's ask whoever was involved like what they were thinking about. Because I have the feeling that they were also thinking on syncing with. So Lucas is here, but probably not here. So, yeah. And Dale.
I was involved in the next measure, by the way. I was the one who suggested.
I know you were the one suggesting it, but I was understanding it as a way to sync with the spec, not to, and that's why it was created at the same time on the 3 repos, right? And otherwise we will create the same thing on every repo, right? We will have a next major branch on every repo. So to me, yes. I saw it like this, like it was just for syncing with the spec. I will clarify that first and then decide what to do. But yeah. But the whole release process that we have right now is spec pull request. Like you have a pull request, which is a breaking change. That's fine. New breaking change, new major version.
Where should we have that discussion?
That's fine. We can have any discussions here.
Now it's more like where,
we can have it.
Which repository?
Where?
So we can use the one I created.
Yeah, Sergio created an issue or something. So we can use
it's about the next branch, but we can discuss it. Let me paste it here. Maybe.
Which, by the way, I agree. Like, we should keep it to next, not next minor. Yeah, like next versions don't have to be minor always. There might be a
that's another point. Maybe we don't need next major, next release major. Maybe we can just use 1 or 2, and it's just about thinking about it. We cannot think now here in the meeting. You know, it's like I think it's simpler than what we are presenting here, right? And we don't have to reinvent the wheel at the end. So I don't know.
Makes sense.
But for the case, I think for the case of I don't know, in the spec, for instance, for the case of the spec, I think it makes sense to have next major, right? Because there will be a lot of iterations until we get into something that is let's say doable, right? But yeah, on the rest, I don't think it's needed. So unless it's to sync with this one, with the next.
Yeah, but look at the parser work, rewriting it to TypeScript.
Okay, yeah, exactly. That's another great example. Yeah, parser rewriting the whole thing in parser is the same thing. Like whenever you're facing a huge rewrite or a huge work that needs to span multiple pull requests, then yeah, create a new branch, like temporary branch, right? That will replace master in this case. And then this branch will get merged into master. The name doesn't have to be temporary though. The name can always be next major, I agree. But it's temporary for the time you're doing the major work, right? So
I think just leaving it there, because then I will forget for sure. So if we stick with next and next measure, at the end, it's just a matter of coordinating from the issues which branches are involved into a release. For example, for the 2.4, at the end, everything is not going to be, I guess, a breaking change on any of those libraries, not in the parser, not in the schemas. So for this one, it will be always like next, and next, right?
Yeah.
In the spec, the parser, in the schemas. For the 3.0, it may happen Now, because we are going to merge this splitting out all the definition, it might happen that the only one that it's not a major change is going to be the schemas, right? Because we are just going to be adding a new schema.
Yeah.
So it's not breaking anything.
It's not breaking anything.
So it would mean next measure for the spec, next measure for the parser, next for the schemas. Wait, no, but think about it. So
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
If you represent what I presented this from the point of view of the spec, but then I think I realized it doesn't quite make sense, because the only problem we are facing here is coordinating which branches are being involved into one spec release.
Yeah.
And we already do that in the issue that we create automatically, like work on release, blah, blah.
Would you base your 2.4 on version 3 of the JSON schema spec repo? Or would you base it off the version 2 of the repository?
No, I will do it for the 3. Okay. But that doesn't mean it's a breaking change for anything else.
Oh, of course, yeah. Yeah.
Because we are going to merge it now into master, right? Today, tomorrow, whatever.
Yep.
So it doesn't change.
So here's once again the discussion about having specific single repository lifecycle versus syncing with the spec. We need to make it clear, and I will add something to the branch name, like this is to sync with the spec, and this is not about this specific repository, right? So this one is related to syncing with the spec, like, I don't know, like next, for instance, right? So next to me, it's something related to the spec, actually, like next spec will trigger this. So probably it has to be called next spec.
Probably,
something
yeah.
like that. You know what I mean?
Probably,
next,
yes.
Because then it otherwise it might look like it's the next version of the parser, the next version of the spec JSON schemas, and it's not. It's the next it's for the next version of the spec. So
Yeah,
probably we have to add that thing to make it clear, to differentiate from own life cycle to coordinated life cycle. Yeah.
I think it's that. Yeah, exactly. That makes sense.
Okay, so we continue the discussion in there, and
Yeah.
do any of you
type
want
something.
to write the conclusion from this?
Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. So last up on the agenda is, so it's a bit lonely. Last time I had a meeting about the collection of applications. So going forward, I'm not sure when I will do another meeting about the collection of applications. I don't think this is just a personal opinion, I don't think it's time yet to discuss it. I don't think there's enough traction, and I don't think it makes enough sense to continue the discussion before or after 3.0. I don't think it makes sense to include it in 3.0. And the reason, and I'm just saying this because we don't have enough opinions or different opinions on it yet. So continuing the discussion would feel like a bit wouldn't make sense to me. That said, I still think it's something that we will have to address after 3.0, because as more platforms probably are gonna start using async API, they're gonna face this problem of how do you make a collection of applications? Like, how do you group them together? But until we get,
I agree, it's too early, and we don't have enough people giving us opinion which is fine. I mean, it usually happens in the beginning. But I've been thinking about it and was thinking more and more that maybe we should create a new spec for that, actually. Like it should be a new spec, like little spec, right? Like a different type of file or spec that allows you not only to group other reference other async API files, something like that, but maybe also reference GraphQL schemas, gRPC, protobuf, blah blah blah, other type, not just async API. So
Yep.
Open API.
That's a good point.
Which reminds me a lot to apis.json from Kinlane, which is exactly, not exactly that, but very similar. Let me show it here. Always Kinlane is like 10 years ahead of people. Yeah, in his case, he doesn't only allow you to define these things, but to but to also have like pricing models for your API and things like this. So, so yeah, more stuff. Yeah, I guess it's too early for apis.json. Yeah, it's basically the same concept. It's like a spec above all the other specs, which is compatible with all the other specs, right? And therefore it lets you group other the specs. We don't have to go in this direction though. Like we can start simple and just accept async API, right? That's fine, and that's it. And then through the reuse of through bindings on async API spec and all the work that will happen on async API, then people will be able to have REST APIs, define GraphQL, and so on. While the top spec only accepts async API, right? That could be an option to say, or maybe not. Maybe we move this responsibility to this new spec.
Yeah, I think it's a good opinion.
It's a shame we don't have Dave here, because he will write it down in 10 seconds.
Yeah. So actually, I was actually thinking on event catalog because of that. Like, one of the use cases is having an event catalog. He actually had to add support for OpenAPI lately, so on event catalog, and that's precisely what I mean. Like, I was expecting that. Like, people are using events, yes, but they're also using REST. They're using GraphQL. They're using gRPC. So eventually, if you're letting people define a set of services or APIs, they will ask you for more. Like, what about those? REST or OpenAPI? What about GraphQL? What about? So yeah, instead of overcomplicating async API, one option could be we move all of this to the new spec, right? And we only stick to events, let's say, or messaging on async API spec. Might facilitate things. That's it. I don't know.
You're always in time to merge if at some point makes sense. But I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly. We can always merge them, or we can just redefine the new one as async API, and the existing one right now is a subset of this new one. Can also be. That's also another possibility. It's interesting times, for sure. Interesting times.
So what's gonna happen with that? Are we gonna discard it? Like close the issue? Are we gonna write down something, some conclusions?
No, I think the issue makes sense. I think it probably doesn't have to be addressed inside the async API specification. We create another, let's say, specification. I don't know. What do you want to call it? API async. Okay, so we create now API async.
Not async anymore.
Not async. We create or many asyncs.
And
many
API.
async spec. What?
And API.
Any API.
Any
Any API.
Any API sync, unsync, whatever. And we work there, but the ISO makes sense. And if there's a new repo for that work, which I think it will make sense, probably, I don't know, maybe not. We move the issue to over this repo, and that's it. But that's how I imagine it. If the spec is, if we work on the spec on this new spec on the same repo, which could also happen as a different file, then the issue stays there, and that's it.
guess we will see, right? Because
Huh?
it will probably be brought up again eventually once people are starting to need it more.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna make a conclusion or a suggestion of conclusion, I guess, in the issue. And I think it makes sense we can remove it from the milestone. I'm not even sure if it is on the milestone. It's probably not. It's not. Okay, never mind then.
No.
But yeah. As basically a conclusion.
It's not in the milestone, but it's in
Isn't it
the issue, yes.
Isn't it the milestone?
It's not, but
The many meanings of async API is not there.
The many meanings are, but the many
Yeah.
meanings is.
That's exactly that.
I mean, it goes beyond that, right? It's also.
Yes. So this
Okay.
this was more like a general question, like what's the meaning of async API or the many meanings that it can have. And
Right.
but the main discussion there was a collection of applications, right?
That was what it mainly was, yeah. I'm not sure if we should include, or if it basically includes allowing you to define a collection of, not a collection of applications, but like the menu that we see being used. So async API is being used to only have a menu of events, for example, or a menu of definitions. I'm not sure if that should be discussed further in the many meanings, but
Probably, yeah. Like that's but I think that this one is, I think it's simpler. Like having just a menu, as far as we have operations as something optional, that's it. You get a menu.
yep. And I mean,
Right.
we actually already, we haven't really decided on it, but
Yeah.
Sergio, you had an issue that is make channels field optional within the async API file. That is basically making that along with operations. If operations are optional, that's also right.
The thing is, it's a menu, but since async API is defining a specific application, just by removing operations, it is not about a specific application anymore. The file, you know what I mean?
Maybe, yeah.
That is something
Yes.
weird. That is something weird.
Yes.
So that is like a side effect. If I have this operations field, it means the whole document means something. If I don't have it, the whole document means something different. Hey,
Oh,
Lucas.
Lucas. Hola. I was tired of looking at you like, sorry, but I have to do this. Look at this.
You can, I mean, maybe you can stop the live stream if you want, and we can stay here.
But yeah, I
it's
think that's more or
weird.
less.
So you don't have operations, no application, or
no application. Yeah, that's weird.
It makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense, but yeah, it's not easy to see it. You know?
Yep.
So, or maybe you want to define all the channels of a specific application, and your document is still incomplete. Like you haven't finished your async API document yet, but you already want to, I don't know, generate documentation or something. And then you are in this weird state that no, I mean a specific application, but I don't have operations yet because I haven't had time yet to define them. But I still mean a specific application, and it might be a problem. So maybe this is also worth moving to this hypothetical new spec, right? Or hyper spec or something or whatever.
Yeah, true.
Bye, Sergio.
I have to leave, folks. See ya.
Ciao, ciao.
Yeah. Let's see. But yeah, let's wrap it up. We are 5 minutes over, but
Yeah.
I guess we started late as well, so it's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you all for joining. See you next time.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ciao. Thanks, Lucas, for coming back.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.